Hi, I'm Amalia Johnson.
And I'm Chris Flavelle.
And this is Your World in 5, where we give you a day's worth of international news in just 5 minutes. We start today with an update on swine flu. The World Health Organization announced on Wednesday that it had raised its pandemic alert to level 5. That's the second highest level of alert, and it indicates that in the opinion of the WHO, a pandemic is essentially imminent.
Now, for those wondering, a pandemic is defined as occurring over a wide geographic area and affecting an exceptionally high proportion of the population. It does not necessarily mean that a high number of those affected will be killed by the disease. Meanwhile, the first death from swine flu outside of Mexico was reported yesterday when a 23-month-old died in a hospital in Texas.
As of Thursday morning, at least 13 countries have confirmed cases of swine flu. Those countries include Mexico, the US, Canada, several European countries, as well as Israel, New Zealand and Peru. There have so far been no cases of swine flu reported in Asia, a situation that may well have changed by the time you watch this webcast.
Now, with the pandemic all but certain, the WHO has called for countries to forget about containing the disease and focus their efforts instead on mitigating its effects. Many countries have responded by simply ignoring the advice.
In the US, Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano has been grilled by members of Congress over her decision not to close the border with Mexico. You wonder if those same senators will also urge New Jersey and Connecticut to close the border with New York State, given that more than half of the country's confirmed cases originated there.
Many other countries are warning their citizens not to travel to Mexico and even to avoid travel to the United States, where the number of confirmed cases on Thursday was 93, with another 92 suspected, according to the New York Times. We'll update you on this again in our next episode.
In South Asia, the situation in Sri Lanka has continued to heat up. Government officials there have pushed back against Western criticism of their offensive against rebel group the Tamil Tigers. Earlier this week, the Swedish foreign minister, set to join a European delegation advocating a ceasefire in the country, was denied a visa to Sri Lanka. And on Thursday, it emerged that this same European delegation had not succeeded in persuading the Sri Lankan government to negotiate with rebels. Sri Lankan forces have cornered the rebels in an area covering about 6 square miles in the north of the country, and it appears the rebels are nearing defeat. However, some 50,000 civilians are trapped in that same area and are allegedly being used by the rebels as human shields. Western fears of large-scale civilian casualties have led to calls from several countries for a ceasefire. But for now, the government has no desire to listen, arguing that the West should not believe the propaganda of terrorists.
A ceremony was held in Iraq on Tuesday to mark the end of the 6-year British military presence in that country. Today, the UK will conclude their combat operations in Iraq and hand over all responsibilities to the US military. British troops started pulling out last month and are expected to be out of the country entirely by the end of June, a month ahead of schedule. British Prime Minister Gordon Brown called Iraq, quote, a success story, and said that Britain could be proud of the legacy left in that country. But the opposition party leader, David Cameron, has already demanded an inquiry into the Iraq war, arguing there are vital lessons to learn, and he says they need to learn them rapidly. This, of course, is 2009. The war began in 2003. 179 British soldiers have died in Iraq since the invasion 6 years ago. In southern Iraq, where British forces were based, things are certainly more stable than they were a year ago. But the recent surge in bombings in the north of Iraq is one indication of how fragile the situation remains.
Having now left Iraq, British forces are expected to refocus their efforts in Afghanistan. They'll be sending 700 additional troops to Afghanistan to fight alongside the US and NATO forces already there.
That's it for us today. I'm Chris.
I'm Amalia, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us.